You're listening to the Men in Blazers Media Network, Suboptimal Radio.
I was on top of the world. I don't know how else to describe it. And then the ref, she did the little VAR box, that gesture that just makes your soul crumble if you play up top. I think if you had no audio and no time and you zoomed it on my face the entire time, you see the light leave my eyes, the back of it's just deflating.
It's Rog back with another episode of The Women's Game, presented only by the network which broadcasts the NWSL and your Women's Super League in the United States. That would be Mighty Paramount Plus. And joining me today, I've got two of my favourite people in the National Women's Soccer League. How we've missed them on this podcast while they were rocking it in Mexico post CONCACAF W glory. First up, it's that gladiator of the OL Reign backline, the greatest cook since Jeremy Allen White on the Bear. Oh, it's incredible to see. Alana, cook.
Oh, what an intro, Raj. Happy to be back.
It's a joy to see you. Glory, glory, Alana Cook. And with her, a woman who has climbed scheduling mountains just to be with us today. I couldn't be happier to have her back on the pod because, well, she's such a force for good in this world. Gotham FC's fourth all-time leading scorer. First all-time in the post-Sky Blue era, but who's counting? I'm counting. It's the mighty Midge Purce.
Thanks, Raj. Happy to be here.
Did you know that you're the fourth all-time lead scorer in Gotham FC
I
history?
did not. That shocked me to hear that.
Only fourth, Midge?
I haven't been here that long. Who's the top three?
You know, I actually don't. All I know is by reading my tattoo, which reads fourth all-time lead scorer in Gotham FC, Midge Purce. Those are the only stats I know and care about right now. But Alana and Midge, it is incredible to have you back with us. Alana, last time we had you on, you just arrived at national team camp in Denver. Midge, you have done so much since we last spoke. You've qualified for the World Cup. You've won that final against Canada. The Olympics too. Does it all feel like a blur now? Or is it like sleepaway camp as a kid where you feel like you've lived an entire vivid other life in just a few short weeks?
I think, Raj, it's probably a mix of both. I feel like now that we're back kind of in the NWSL swing of things, at least for us personally, I got back. We had a few days of training and we were off to LA, then Louisville, then back at home. So it's part fever dream that we were in Denver, Utah, and Mexico for 5 weeks, and part, kind of a glorious summer trip that ended in obviously a very good result for us.
Midge, does time go fast? Does this time go slow when you're in Mexico?
When you're in it, it goes really slow, I think. Really slow. Because I think it's also really stressful. You're in Mexico and it's fantastic to be, in a different country. You're with your friends, but it's not vacation at all. And you're playing football, you're like having a good time, but it's like you're trying to qualify for the World Cup and the Olympics, the pressure's on. So it goes slow, I think, because there's so much at stake. But then before you know it, somehow it's done.
There was so much glory in that time. I'd love to ask you both, what is your on the field in that campaign, the slightly weirdly named CONCACAF W Championship? And I'm going to say again, I want the Men's Gold Cup to be renamed CONCACAF M Championship from now on. But what is there a memory on the field that stands out for you both as your favourite?
I think for me, it's definitely just kind of the final whistle blowing against Canada. It's my first major tournament, so that's kind of the first, final I've gotten to win with the team, and getting to do it against, our rivals to the north. I think that was just a pretty incredible moment for me in my career.
I agree, and I don't want to be selfish and say my favorite moment wasn't the final whistle blowing and when we all collectively won together. However, my favorite moment, and this is going to be very surprising, I think, it was the first goal I scored with Pino that got called back. It was euphoric before it got called back. I was on top of the world. And then VAR just destroyed it.
Can you describe you? I'm genuinely fascinated because you are all, obviously, collective glory is, there's nothing better. But you are all competing for places in these things you've qualified, these things being the Olympics, the World Cup. So in that moment, Midge Purce, a deeply competitive goal scorer, scores a goal. Can you talk us through that arc of emotions as yes, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're coming off the bench, all you want to do is score. It's the best thing that you can do to contribute to the team. And when it happens, coming off the bench kind of quickly, it just feels euphoric. It's incredible. You're like, I did my job already. There's nowhere to go but up. It's great. And when we jogged back to the halfway line, I was on top of the world. I don't know how else to describe it. And then the ref, she did the little VAR box, that gesture that just makes your soul crumble if you play up top. And she did a nice point to a goal kick, and my world just crumbled, but I held it together.
I mean, on the inside, though, is it like Ralph Wiggum on The Simpsons where you can pinpoint the exact moment when his heart breaks? If we look at that footage, will we see even a flicker?
100%. I think if you had no audio and no time and you zoomed it on my face the entire time, you see the light leave my eyes, the back of it's just deflating.
The 5 weeks were a journey. There's a lot of new mountaintops to climb ahead. I am fascinated. What was the most important lesson you learned about yourselves in those 5 weeks?
I think in a tournament like that, for me personally, it's the ability to kind of play one game, process everything, learn from it, and then move on just as quickly. So, not dwelling on things that were lows or weaknesses in that performance and being able to take the highs and kind of push forward with those. So, I think that's something that I'll continue to develop and hopefully have more experience in future tournaments with.
I 100% agree. I think when you get to this level and you have to be really competitive to get to this level, and you have to be your biggest critic most of the time. So I think when you're already here, you go into a game and you are yourself's biggest critic. You want to tear everything you've done apart, but there's not enough time to really marinate on everything you did wrong and get over it and then build back up for the next game. There's only, what is it, Lonnie, 3 days?
Yeah.
3 days, you really have to get over it. And that's really hard because a lot of us joke about how if we have a bad game, we're literally mute. Like, you will not hear anything from us on the bus, at dinner, at breakfast until you get back on the field and perform well. There's like this shame. It's like, don't look at me. My passing percentage was below 50. I cannot make eye contact with anyone. And you cannot do that in this tournament because you just have to bounce back. You can't draw energy from other people. There's not enough time to be like, oh my goodness, when's the next time I'm going to get on the field and play? You just have to forget about it and move on. So I think that's what I learned you have to do. We did a good job, Lonnie.
Yeah, I mean, Midge and I sat next to each other on the bus the whole trip, and some days we had silent bus rides, some days we had very talkative bus rides, and I think we kind of knew, depending on each other's performance, which one each of us needed.
Mind you, I had no data. So my Verizon International plan for some reason was not working. And I had no data while Alana had data. So for me not to speak to her on the bus, like, I really was in a bad place. Because I talk to her every time we get on the bus. But there are some days I would sit down on the inside seat because there's 2 seats. I like to sit on the outside. But I would sit on the inside and my face would not leave the window. And Alana just knew. Just give her the bus ride and she'll talk at dinner.
Yeah, we'll be all right by dinner.
So we're talking about a time of darkness, but we also saw a lot of light. And I have to ask you about Cabo, because you two were amongst a gang of US luminaries who took a little weekend at Bernie's post-tournament holiday down there during the NWSL's week off. And quite a crew you brought with you. Sauerbrunn, Germa, Sam Hyatt, Rapinoe, Quinn, Nikki Stanton. Honestly, felt like, well, pretty well the entire NWSL All-Star game was there at one point or another. I don't know what it was like to live. For just following along on social, it looked a bit like a remake of The Hangover.
No. There was no hangover on record that happened there. Cabo was great. It was amazing. It actually started off, it was supposed to be me and Alana. Alana and I were going on vacation because we didn't know who else was going, and I was determined to go on vacation and Alana was determined to go on vacation. And then somehow it snowballed into a bigger group trip, which I have personally never been on. I've never been on a girls trip. I've never been on a group vacation. My dad didn't let me go to Cancun in college during spring break when everyone else went, which was devastating to my social livelihood in college, but we persevered. Regardless, this was my first group trip, and Alana took it upon herself to plan everything, absolutely everything. So it was really Lonnie. Lonnie, talk about what went into that process.
Yeah, I think Midge and I knew there was a collective interest between us two to go on vacation, and we basically said, listen, we're already in Mexico. Let's find somewhere. And Cabo became, the destination. And, I'm looking at hotels and I'm kind of like, Midge, do you want to look at some? I think if I try to find the hotel, it might not go great. So, you know what? I got it. I'll plan. So yeah, we ended up staying at the hotel with, a whole bunch of other people from camp and from the NWSL. And I think for me, it was bliss. I think coming off the tournament where every day you're kind of living the same, like Midge said, it's stressful. Every day you're kind of you're processing last training, you're getting ready for the next game, getting ready for next training, to kind of waking up, you just hear the ocean, didn't set an alarm, have food delivered to your room. It was the purest form of just joy and having no obligations that I think I felt in a really, really long time.
And I thought about that as I was watching you all yachted up. A reminder that summer vacation shots are not ones we often see for NWSL players, where your schedule traditionally goes right through the summer. And do you like the NWSL schedule, having the winter off, not having to play in cold weather, taking time away from your club season to go to these big summer tournaments? Or in the ideal world, would you like to see the NWSL on a schedule that matches more up with the FIFA calendar?
I think having been in leagues that do both, I think there's pros and cons to each. I think in the US, it would be particularly hard to try and play through the winter season. I can only imagine flights in and out of Gotham in December getting canceled left and right. With that said, there is the opposite side, which is playing in a Houston in the middle of July, August, which is also pretty wild that we have to do that. I think for me, it is difficult to leave your club. And I think it was hard watching from afar our club teams and, just being able to kind of root for them and send text messages, but not really kind of getting to be with your club, in those on those game days. So I think ideally it would be great if probably the weather and travel allowed for us to do the more year-round schedule like they do in the European leagues. But I do think it has its challenges here in the US.
I agree. I'm not 100% sure which one is better, but I will say that for me, I hate that we end in the fall when the air is getting crisp, when it's 60 degrees outside and it smells like football season. You know what I mean? Summer to me does not.
Football weather.
It's perfect football weather. Some people wear an Under Armour, some people don't. You can choose. It's.
I think I look better in long sleeves.
You do. You do look better in long sleeves. It's true.
Thank you.
And I think it just smells like football. And I personally think I play better football in the fall regardless. Because if you think even of college, NCAAs, that's in the fall. That's your peak. It's just your touch is crisper. I don't know what it is. But summer's not fun. No one wants to go to Houston and play in 103 degrees weather, 60% humidity, and it's kick and run. No, thank you.
Smells like football season, and it is fascinating because the gents football season gets underway in Europe right now, and we've been talking a lot about the oddness of this Qatar broken up season for the Men's World Cup. and how that might affect players and their clubs. And I'm fascinated because you've just recently returned from a mid-season break, a 6-week break, 5 weeks with the national team, 1 week of recovery. How have you experienced that in terms of the balance and unbalance that brings to players and teams? Because everyone's trying to work out how it will impact the men's game in Europe with Qatar slapped down in the middle of it. Is it a big deal transitioning in and out of club play after a tournament?
I don't know if I share the same sentiments as everyone else, because for me, being in the NWSL and not going to those tournaments and not getting called in the beginning years of my career, it's really hard, and you want to go. It's like I'd give anything to leave and go play with the national team and come back. It's an honor. It's the coolest thing. So I personally love being able to go and come back.
Do you find it hard coming back, like transitioning between the two?
Yes and no. No, because I come back sharper. It's hard not to, because the speed of play is just faster and you're playing with the best players in the US. So I feel like when I come back from national team camp, I'm like, oh, I'm buzzing. I feel so good in practice. I'm like, give me the ball. I'm dropping in the seam too. I'm on the half turn. I'm like, put me in the 10, okay? So I like coming back.
Maybe we should ask your teammates how they feel when you come back.
Yeah, you should. You should look at the film from practice. Christy's gonna be like, literally, no, you never do that. You literally, I beg you to come back to feet, and all you do is run through the line. I was offsides 5 times in my last game. Couldn't get it right. For a second, I was like, wait, how do we press here? I forgot. We were gone for what? How long were we gone? 4 weeks, 5 weeks?
Yeah, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, and I was like, we're forcing in? I was like, I don't know how to do that anymore. Like, my feet go the opposite way automatically.
Speaking of Europe, Alana, I do need to ask you about the Euros. Your father, as we've discussed, is English. You're actually eligible to play for England. And we're even called into camp by Phil Neville for the Lionesses back in 2019. You've trained with Millie Bright, Lucy Bronze, Leah Williamson and the rest before committing to the United States. What emotions did you experience watching this tournament, this team, this final?
Obviously, with English heritage, there is pride there, but I think just as kind of, all of us felt as female athletes, as fans of the game, I think there was just an incredible sense of pride in the crowds that it drew in the massive amounts of attention and investment that went into the tournament. I think you look at the way that they were able to sell out stadiums, the final, the atmosphere, it's just incredible. And I think then you look at our upcoming game against England, selling out Wembley in 24 hours. I think they're experiencing, kind of what the US saw with the 99ers and with a lot of the players that have come before us here. So it is really cool. I think we were a little too young to get to see kind of that revolution of women's soccer in the US in that sense, but we're getting to now see it in England and in Europe. So I feel like we're witnessing history in real time and able to actually kind of appreciate and understand the significance of what this will mean to the future.
Midge, how much of the Euros did you take in? What did you make of it, the quality of play, and the notion of the gap closing between the US and the rest of the world?
I mean, the Euros were fantastic. We watched some of them in camp, some of them out of camp, and every time we would walk into the lunchroom, the dining room, I was trying to find the table with the biggest view of the TV. I was like, I'm not sitting over there because I can't see the TV well enough. And it was amazing. I thought the quality was great. I thought the England-Germany game, it was so good. The goals in the Sweden game were each one was so prolific. I was really blown away, and I was just like, yeah, that's gonna be a good game. That's gonna be crazy.
October the 7th.
October the 7th, sold out. But I just loved the fans. I loved how committed they were to everything. Even seeing Phil Foden in the stands freaking out at the end of the game. That's what football is. That's what it looks like. And I just have so much respect for them as a country, embracing them in that way.
And I think too, Midge, what you're saying that was really cool for me was like, we're obviously in Mexico and we can just go to our meal room and turn on the TV and it was there readily available for us. You know, we weren't searching through YouTube links. We weren't trying to find some random subscription channel. It was like a quality production that respected the size of the event and the importance of the event. And I think that's really cool to see as well.
Which players impressed you?
For me, it was Alicia Russo and, you know, the iconic goal that has swept the nation. She was incredible. I thought she had a great tournament.
Was it just like you looked at that flick and were like, oh, that's in the Midge Purce arsenal. I need to break that one out. She broke it out before me.
I was so jealous that never in my life have I even fathomed to do that. And no one will ever do it in an iconic way the way she did. Like you have to now do like some kind of Cruyff. Like it's not, you can't do a back heel. It's just gonna be like, oh, like it's been done. That's cute. It was cool, but it's not the original.
It's true. Everybody, when it was a goal yesterday from the halfway line by Ismail Sarr for Watford, it was incredible. And we popped it out on our social. Everyone was like, oh, he Carly Lloyded it. And I'm just like, if you were to do that goal now and you'd run off and you'd be like, I did it. And everyone would just be like, oh, you Alicia Russo'd it into the back of the net. It would just feel lesser.
100%. I think they would say, relax, humble yourself. We've seen this before. It's not that special. And by they, I say this is my father after the game. Literally tearing me down for whatever celebration I did.
One of these days, we are going to do a pod before the end of the season with you and your father, because he makes such a recurring starring guest role. It is remarkable. But Alana Cook, who stood out for you?
Well, first off, Midge, I'm excited to see what is going to become your iconic they Midge Pursed it. So I'm keeping my eyes peeled, keep practicing. But I think for me, I think a couple midfielders, Walsh with England and Oberdorf with Germany, I think were pretty standout to me. You know, I think just being able to control tempo, control everything that went through the center of the park for their teams respectively. I think, I think sometimes the defensive midfielder role can be overlooked. And I think sometimes their contributions aren't necessarily recognized as much as an iconic goal or as forward scoring, doing different moves. But I think they were major contributors to their team's success. And I think it's probably no surprise that you saw those two teams, go as far as they did. I think someone like an Andy Sullivan with the U.S., I think like a Julie Ertz, the roles that they've played with the national team and the things they contribute on the field, it's pretty incredible. And it's pretty, I think, pivotal to the success of the team, both offensively and defensively.
One question we get a lot from fans, particularly in the wake of a tournament like this Mighty Euros, which was such a showcase for the level and quality of the European game right now, is whether more American players should be thinking about going over to play in Europe. And I imagine it's a question you get asked a lot as well, Alana, having started your career at PSG. What do you say to people when they ask you that, to young American players looking for advice?
I think just looking at my own experience and having talked to, other Americans who have gone abroad and players who, come to the NWSL from abroad, I think that, there's a right choice for everyone and a right path for everyone. And I think that's, looking at timing of your career, what you're ready to do. But at the end of the day, and something I've talked about with Tobin Heath here as well, having played at PSG and she's as well played in England, I think the more you can kind of diversify your experiences, the better you are. I think there are different styles here and, the different countries in Europe. There's different life experiences. There's definitely a sense of stepping out of your comfort zone. And I think all of those things, the more you experience them, the more you do them, the better you are kind of as a well-rounded human, not just as a soccer player. So yeah, my advice would be if that's available to you, if that feels like the right path, I think it's definitely an incredible experience and it's something that, adds value.
Do you think we'll see a lot more players in NWSL think now, after watching the Euros, after seeing those crowds, after seeing the tactical level of football, the coaching, the infrastructure at places like Chelsea, do you think that will become a more considered option? We've seen Rose Lavelle, Sam Ewis, Alex Morgan, Kristin Press, Tobin, all of them head off, all of them come back. Do you think it will become just more of an option that individuals will be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely going to be on people's radars more. Like I said, I think the quality of the production and kind of the global reach that it had is definitely going to serve, that league well in terms of kind of almost like a promotional campaign. I think it would be really cool if we kind of saw just more generally kind of a global exchange of players, whether that's, players from the US going over to Europe or European players coming over to NWSL. I think it would just be really cool to see kind of the intermixing of that.
To the action this past weekend. First up, Friday night, Portland Thorns looking like they won the game against North Carolina multiple times, but could not close the deal. North Carolina finding a way back every time, the game ending in a magical 3-3 draw. But by way of consolation, that draw was enough to move the Thorns into first place, tied with San Diego for points, but my God, miles ahead on goal difference. And what I'd love to know is, how much do teams actually value the Shield as a prize in and of itself? Or is the focus always on the ultimate crock of gold at the end of the rainbow, the playoffs first and foremost?
I mean, I know for us personally at Reign, it's, we have a list of objectives and the Shield is certainly on it. I think, you want to be the best regular season team, I think, for pride, but also because that should be the result of putting out good performances and getting, the results that you've earned every week. With that said, I do think you do probably determine the success of your season a little bit more on how you fare in playoffs. So I do think that is the bigger prize, and that is, at the end of the day, more important, right? You can't win the championship if you don't make it to playoffs, and winning the Shield, I think, is a good way to guarantee you make it into playoffs. But I think in the past, right, has there been a team that has won the Shield and won the championship?
Yes, North Carolina did multiple times.
Okay, so yeah, I think, you have one example of someone doing it, but I do think that late season push to win the Shield can sometimes be hard to then carry into playoffs, right? You don't want to peak at the end of regular season. You want to peak for the championship. So I think it is definitely a balancing act between the two.
To me, it's kind of like when you're running a relay and you win your individual race in the relay, but then your group still loses the relay. Like, cool, you did something that is good for you individually as your team, and it put your team in a better position to do well, but you still didn't accomplish the overall goal, which is to win the entire relay, not just one rep.
The other exclamation point of that game, Portland Thorn, Sophia Smith, 2 goals Friday night, and is now level with Alex Morgan in the NWSL Golden Boot race. They both have 11 goals on the season right now. A clash of footballing generations to some degree. Sophia, at age just 21, is actually the youngest player in the history of the league to score more than double figures in a single season. And we've talked about Sophia on this podcast before. You both know her very well from the national team. Alana, you also captained her for a year at Stanford. What does it mean for you to watch her go toe-to-toe with Alex for the Golden Boot?
I think I'm just sitting back and enjoying watching. Now that especially we're done playing Portland and San Diego, I think I can get to kind of just enjoy that competition between Alex and Soph. And I really appreciated, I think, what she said during maybe an interview after the game. But it is kind of like they're going head to head, and it's may the best woman win. And so I think it is really cool to get to watch the generations and someone that Soph has probably grown up watching, to get to watch them compete and see, who's going to come out on top. I think it's going to be pretty thrilling towards the end. We see it week in and out. I think that some of the goals she scored in this past weekend, where she's kind of just running up the middle of a team, it shows her quality on the ball, and it also shows how dynamic and explosive she can be. She keeps the ball close to her, and you have to guess right or left and hope you've gotten it right, because if you get it wrong, she's blazing past you and you don't have time to recover.
Alex and Soph are both in such good form right now. When they're both on the field, I think both teams expect them to score, whether you're playing against them or you're playing with them. So I really think it's going to be an interesting race that's going to go all the way through playoffs, not even just to the regular season. Yeah, Soph looks great. She's doing so well. And I think what's really special is she's scoring goals in different types of ways. She's hit some volleys. She's scoring with her left foot. She's scoring with her right foot. She's doing breakaways. It's not just one way that she's scoring. I think she's had 2 PKs, but most of her goals have been in the run of play, and Alex has had a lot of PKs. So I think going through the rest of the season, it is going to be really interesting to see how teams try to limit both of them.
This was a disappointing weekend for San Diego. They experienced their first home loss of the regular season. Kansas City emerging victorious. And Kansas City, team we haven't talked that much about recently, but they have been surging in the past month. 9 games unbeaten. Suddenly 3 points off Portland at the top of the table. And 25-year-old Cece Kaiser, 4 goals in the last 6 games. You've both played them recently and been beaten. I'll just say that quietly. What makes this team so difficult to play against?
From the time we played them first to the second time, obviously wasn't there for the second game, but having watched and kind of, spoken to the team about how it went, I think Kansas City's, they've made a few trades. They've kind of, I think, locked down their identity. Obviously, I think they had turnover in the offseason, new coach, bringing new players in, and then, they lose Sam, they lose Lynn. I think at the beginning of the season, they probably were kind of searching for what their identity was going to be and how they were going to execute on the field. And I think, they've definitely come to form now, and we're seeing the result of that. They're putting goals away. They're putting on consummate performances. I think Pickett and LeBonta up the middle have put on some really good performances and really helped lead the team and give them some direction. So, I think we're seeing a team that's really finding themselves, and we're seeing it in their results. We're seeing it in their standings.
Tell me about that game. Wave goalkeeper Kaylin Sheridan stopped a penalty in the 69th minute. Incredibly, the 3rd straight game where she has saved a penalty kick, which is a remarkable feat of endurance and athleticism and emotional intelligence, but one that also suggests that San Diego are conceding a lot of penalties at the moment. Alana, as a defender, what does it feel like when you concede a penalty? The immediate aftermath of the ref's call, is it emotionally you're just like, I did what I could, or is it like an agonizing sense of I did this?
I think there's 2 situations. I think there's the I've committed a penalty and yep, that was a penalty, and there's kind of a moment of I feel like maybe I've let the team down, or I've clearly made a mistake here, and then there's also the moment where you get called for a penalty and you're kind of like, I don't think that was a foul. And I think that's probably just anger. There's probably like pure rage in that moment between you and the referee and maybe the player for if you feel like they've created a foul or, forwards as they do. Midge.
No, I understood that was a sub tweet at me. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I will just say I say your name, so it's not a sub tweet.
I appreciate
direct
that.
tweet.
Yes, communication is key. High emotional intelligence, because this was going to be taken long off the call.
We'll text about this later. No, I do think that definitely is a difficult moment as a defender, and you're kind of, you're transferring the weight of all of that moment onto your goalkeeper, and you're just hoping that they'll guess right and they'll, kind of by some form of magic and skill be able to kind of bail you out of that situation.
But also, I'll say this, because Kaylin played for Gotham last year. She's one of the best goalkeepers in the world, in my opinion. She's phenomenal. She is so good. And I just feel that could be subconsciously a reason why they don't mind committing fouls. They're probably going in really hard with the comfort in the back of their line that, I have better odds than any other team that she's going to save this. I think it might contribute.
So, it doesn't even matter if we give away a penalty, then it's still not going to score.
Yeah, not that hard, and not.
I love that too. That's like the ultimate vote of confidence.
Yeah, I definitely think it's not. Some teams you're actively thinking about not giving up a PK. Your hands are behind your back. You're like, no, I cannot give up a PK. But when I see them tackling in the box, they're going in pretty hard. So I don't think that it is a major concern / thought for them as a team. I think their identity is we're going to tackle you hard. And if these NWSL refs are too bad, I said it. If they're too bad to not call the correct call on a foul, or whether or not it's a foul, then it is what it is, and Kaylin might save it.
Another talking point from Sunday, the Rain took on Houston Dash for the first time this season, a game that saw Megan Rapinoe score her first goal of the campaign, but ultimately ended in a 2-1 win for Houston off 2 goals by the quite incredible Ebony Salmon. Ebony Salmon, the 21-year-old Aston Villa Academy product, one of the standout players of the season in my mind, was left on the bench for much of the first half of the season at Racing Louisville, requested a trade to Houston in June, saying she wanted to prove her doubters wrong, and is now tearing it up in the heat of Houston with 6 goals in her last 5 games. What have you seen of her and what makes her so difficult to defend against?
I think probably looking at these last few games for Houston and then, looking at our own game against them, you can measure forwards by so many different metrics. And obviously we've talked about a few different forwards already on this podcast and kind of what makes them special. But I think looking back, just even at the stats, she scored 2 goals against us and that was off of 2 shots. So I think, probably the most important metric you can look at for a forward is their efficiency. And if you have someone who's that clinical in front of goal, right, they take 2 shots, both are on target, both goals, that's someone you want in your roster. That's someone you want, starting every game for you. That, as a player, right, you have a forward like that. It gives you so much confidence, right? You're expecting them to score. You know you can go through them and rely on them to get the result when you need it. And, I think for us, we felt like we were doing well in that game. We had kind of the lion's share of possession. But when you have a player like that on the other team, right, they never lose belief. They always know that they have someone, if you get them in a good spot, that they will produce something.
Last storyline of the weekend, and Midge, I do need to ask you about the mighty Gotham. You fell 2-0 to the Red Stars on Sunday, a loss surrounded by so many external challenges, injuries, COVID protocols. Goals have been thin on the ground for Gotham, which means I need to ask you about that absolute beauty of a solo goal that you scored 2 weeks ago against Houston. When I saw that goal, I just wanted to know, what goes through your mind when you do something like that, when you spin round the first opponent? I mean, you're still deep in your own half then.
Yeah, I think actually when I have that much space, I'm actually looking for someone to run at, because I feel that it's from my experience playing outside back, I feel that it's easier to, someone who's on a straight line running towards the goal, I can catch them, I can cut off their angle. It's a lot easier. Alana, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes?
Yeah, no, I think when forwards are running at us, you're looking to pick us off
100%,
one by one.
Yeah, so I'm definitely, I looked up and I was trying to find someone to engage in some type of way before I could get to the goal, so that they can't just knock me off the ball. But
you engaged 3 of them.
Yeah, I didn't know there was 3 of them around. I saw one defender, and that's the front foot that I was running at, and I knew I was going to go left the entire time because of where we were on the field. I was just trying to time it, and then Jane. I actually didn't see Jane at all.
The goalkeeper.
Didn't see her. Didn't see her. Didn't know where she was, but I could tell where I was on the field, and I had been practicing actually chipping it from that spot on the right side that entire week before with Hensley Handcuff, one of our goalkeepers. We had been practicing because in practice I kept getting to that spot and I was trying to smash it near post, and she kept saving it over and over and over again. And she said, if you chip it this way, there's so much space, but you have to get it right. If you don't get it right, you're going to look stupid because it's going to look like you tried to lob it into the goalkeeper's hands. And I said, yeah, that would look really dumb. So I had been practicing that shot.
Does it feel different to other goals when you score one that's almost full length of the field?
How good a goal feels for me depends on the scoreline of the game and the weight of the game. So scoring bangers in practice doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter. And scoring a nice goal when you're losing 4-1, 4-2, it also doesn't matter that much. But, a tap in an NWSL championship, I might just Chloe Kelly it and take off my shirt. Who knows? But it definitely depends on the context of the goal.
Finally, to the weekend ahead. The back half of the season battle continues, starting with the Ebony Salmon Revenge Tour as the Houston Dash take on Racing Louisville Friday, 8:30pm Eastern on Paramount+. Then Saturday, the North Carolina Courage versus a Kansas City Current looking to extend their unbeaten streak to 10. That's 8pm on the Twitch. And at 10:30 Saturday on Paramount+, Double P, San Diego Wave against Orlando Pride. Sunday, though, the game this podcast has really been spiritually building towards from the very beginning. Alana's OL Reign take on Midge's Gotham, Cook versus Purce, the Cabo Derby, get out the Pepto-Bismol, 3 p.m. on old Double P. And talking of Double P, try it free on us by going to paramountplus.com/MIBTWG. That's paramountplus.com/MIBTWG. Do you guys like playing each other, or is it like, oh God, not her again?
I always talk about this whenever I watch Alana play, like in the CONCACAF tournament. She kind of takes on a very different energy, a different persona, and it's not my favorite type of energy to play against. It's crushing. Crushing and indifferent, which I also describe Alana as a person as very indifferent. But she has no concern for anyone else's well-being or safety. She just runs through you. And I don't like to play against defenders like that. So I've said before that when there's really good defenders on fields, I just go to the other side, because why fight tooth and nail when you can run?
I think what Midge said about how when she's running to goal, she's looking for defenders to single out. I think that probably tells you, from a defending standpoint, like that is the last thing you want, right? From the principles defending, you're always looking for, how can I make this a 2v1, a 3v1? How do I delay until I can get cover back? And when you're going against someone like Midge, you won't get that. So at any given moment, she's running directly at you. She's coming for you, right? And she knows in her head she could beat you. So I think, you're almost playing a mind game when you're playing Midge. That her confidence, she always believes she's going to run past you. And what she talked about too, like the reps that she's practicing, she knows where she's on the field at any given moment, what the finish is, how she's going to get there. So, you have to be on your A game when you play Midge.
All I can say is 3 p.m. on Paramount Plus cannot come quick enough. Last but never least, it's Angel City against the Chicago Red Stars, 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. And that is it for this week. And we will close, as is now the tradition, by asking you to take us out on, God, we need this, a note of optimism. Tell us something that's bringing each of you joy this week. Alana.
I think this is the longest period that I get to be in my home for. So I think I get like a week and a half in Tacoma. And in the last 5-6 weeks, I've been away. The next 5-6 weeks, I will also be away. So I'm enjoying my own kitchen, my own bed, and all the creature comforts I have here.
I think for me, coming back from Chicago, our flight was canceled and we didn't get back till midnight. This is negative, but it's going to turn positive. We didn't get back till midnight, and we had to fly into LaGuardia instead of Newark. Anyway, it was a whole thing. But having that extra time with my teammates, we actually sat down, and a few of them told me a lot of things about themselves that I had no idea about. And it was really beautiful to get to know some of the people I'm playing with on a deeper level than just my teammate.
Out of darkness cometh light. I will say, I felt pretty dark at the beginning of this podcast. It's genuinely, I've learned a lot about football. I've learned even more about life by listening to the two of you. It's been remarkable to have you both on. We'll be back next Thursday with yet another episode of the Women's Game. But for now, Alana Cook, big, big, big thank you.
Thanks, Raj.
And Midge Purce, you are an incredible human being. Godspeed.
Thanks, guys.
This is Rog saying courage.